a big blanket was resoundingly 4 years ago. An enduring peace in Northern Ireland has opened up economic and social opportunities for all that the preceding years of conflict and violence had stifled. But unfortunately, concerted action to drive inclusive economic progress has not been a sustained core political focus in the peace process so far. It has been insufficiently taken forward in the work of the power-sharing institutions in Northern Ireland and in the north, south and east-west dimensions of the agreement. This is a significant gap, both in how we support communities and how we work to build mutual trust and reconciliation on this island. John Hume, one of the leading architects of the Good Friday Agreement, was also a tireless campaigner for social and economic justice. He was always clear that equality and shared prosperity would underpin peace, cohesion and harmony between the different communities and traditions on this island. Just before he retired from political life in 2004, in an address to Shannon Eardley, John reminded us that, and I quote, "Through working the agreement, we can build a society where poverty is eliminated, where we provide a very beneficent schools and hospitals, where we nurture our sense of community, where there is no place for racism, and where everyone, young or old, can realize their full potential." I believe we need to reaffirm John Hume's view that the core task of the peace process is to deliver tangible improvements in people's lives and the prospects of all communities. It is by working together across political traditions and across the border for a more inclusive, equitable, prosperous society that we will reach a reconciled future on the island. That dynamic is at the heart of the Government's Shared Island Initiative, which I launched almost 18 months ago. This is a practical, ambitious commitment to work with all communities and traditions to build an inclusive, shared future on this island, underpinned by the Good Friday Agreement. It is backed up by the Government's Shared Island Fund, through which we are providing at least €1 billion for all island investment out to 2030. As part of the revised National Development Plan, we have set out new shared island investment priorities across virtually all sectors for the decade ahead. Our goal is to work with the Executive, the United Kingdom Government, and with local authorities and civil society to invest for a more connected, sustainable and prosperous Ireland for all. We're working now on a whole-of-government basis to achieve it. My department's Shared Island Unit has a driving and coordinating role, working with all government departments and agencies. Last year, the government allocated €50 million from the Shared Island Fund to start moving ahead with the cross-border Ulster Canal and Narrow Water Bridge projects as landmark sustainable tourism and recreation assets, and to deliver a major new €40 million North-South research programme, which is now underway, bringing together researchers to engage in collaborative work that would strengthen the island's reputation for innovation and research excellence, as well as moving to provide solutions to mutual challenges. We're working across government to bring forward other new all-island projects throughout this year, supported through the Shared Island Fund, including seed capital for new regional investment led by cross-border local authority partnerships, all-island EV charging infrastructure, a cross-border community climate action scheme, support for border region enterprise development, and for all-island civil society partnerships. And as I will set out, we want to do considerably more with the Executive and the United Kingdom Government to support educational attainment, skills development, and access to good jobs for all communities on this island. The Shared Island Unit in my department is also commissioning a broad-based research programme, the first of which has now been published. This is looking for the first time, and in a very comprehensive way, at how we share the island today, and how we could do so better in the years ahead for the benefit of all communities. Last week, I launched a major report to government by the National Economic and Social Council on Shared Island, Shared Opportunity. Following broad-based consultation over the last year, NESC has made 25 recommendations on how we can deepen beneficial cooperation across the island in economic, social and environmental terms. Many of the Council's recommendations related to putting more priority on inclusive economic and social progress, including exploring the role of North-South initiatives in tackling concentrations of poverty, particularly in communities still impacted by the legacy of conflict, developing a shared Ireland Good Jobs agenda, fostering more strategic cooperation between further education and training institutions, and developing the role of social enterprise on an all-island basis. TASC has identified important opportunities that are before us to build inclusive prosperity by working through the Good Friday Agreement, both North-South and East-West. And the Government will positively respond to TASC's recommendations and seek to take them forward in consultation with our partners in the Executive and the United Kingdom Government. My department is also working with the Economic and Social Research Institute as part of the research programme, with ESRI reports published in recent months that analyse the structure, connection and collaborative potential of the services economy, foreign direct investment and of primary healthcare systems, all on an island-wide basis. Significant ESRI research to be published next week examines education systems and outcomes north and south, from primary through to tertiary levels. And this year, ESRI work includes mapping of experience and policy on migrant integration on the island, and examining approaches to childcare and early education north and south. The Shared Island Research Programme is providing an important base of impartial evidence and analysis. The government wants to see this then inform policy planning, political debate and agreed action for a more inclusive, equitable, prosperous society on this island in the years ahead. In making this opening contribution to TASC's Shared Island series, I want to highlight three pivotal factors in reaching that goal: education and skills, civic engagement, and political leadership. Education is our bedrock. Success in consistently raising levels of education attainment has been the most fundamental factor in the economic and social progress we have made in recent decades. Education has been an enduring passion of mine throughout my career, and it is, as far as I'm concerned, the great enabler. It's why the establishment of a new Department of Further and Higher Education and Research was such an important part of our programme for government, and it's why I was pleased to be part of the decision in recent weeks to introduce the most radical changes to the Leaving Certificate exam in half a century, and it's why we're also pleased with delivering genuine advances in terms of technological universities. The Institute is progressing in that light. And from my perspective, and I can discuss this later, one of my ongoing concerns is in certain communities, particularly within the north, the failure to attain higher levels of school completion in certain communities and progression onto further training and education. So the focus of our reforms and our investment has to be to empower every person to reach their full potential. So creating more pathways to higher levels of education and the good jobs then that are delivered. And through the DESH programme and school completion programme here, successive governments put a strong and successful focus on retaining students in education. Unfortunately, as confirmed in ESRI research being published next week, education completion rates in Northern Ireland lag behind both the rest of the United Kingdom and Ireland. The Executive is rightly put a focus on addressing this last year, endorsing and agreeing to take forward recommendations in the Fair Start report of the expert panel on educational underachievement, commissioned under the New Decade New Approach Agreement. I have long made the case for both governments as co-guarantors of the Good Friday Agreement to support the Executive on education reform and investment, and to do more ourselves as two governments to address this issue. The unique community context and legacy in Northern Ireland means that education reform is more difficult and complex. It also makes all the more important the role of education in supporting individual and community progress and well-being. The Government already cooperates with the Executive on addressing education underachievement issues through the North-South Ministerial Council. And as part of the Peace Plus programme, funded by the European Union, the United Kingdom Government, Irish Government and the Executive, we will deliver a major 35 million skills development theme over the next 7 years, including to address barriers to participation in further education by disadvantaged groups. The Government will seek to build on these important dimensions of cooperation put a more ambitious, inclusive education and skills agenda at the heart of what we do through the framework of the Good Friday Agreement in the years ahead. Inclusive civic engagement is the second critical factor. It can inform and help to forge consensus around an agenda for building inclusive prosperity on this island. This is central to the government's Shared Island approach. In October 2020, I launched a Shared Island Dialogue series to provide a space for civic conversations on how we work for a shared future on this island. So far, over 1,300 citizens from across the island have participated from all communities, traditions and regions. And we are ensuring the inclusion of voices not sufficiently heard in the peace process, in particular those of women, young people and ethnic minorities. The dialogues are addressing key common concerns for the future for people, north and south, including on education, healthcare and climate action. And engaging with societal questions around identity, culture, equality and inclusion, issues that we need to acknowledge, discuss and strive to do better on together on this island. We are hearing from those most directly involved in different sectors how Shared Island agenda can be shaped around impactful, beneficial, achievable actions by government and civil society alike. And these discussions are clearly affirming the goodwill and common ground there is in civil society to cooperate on common challenges for this island. The dialogues are directly informing how the government is working to deepen our north-south and east-west partnerships through the Good Friday Agreement. We will continue the series through this year, now with events in person and around the island. Next month, with a dialogue in Monaghan, looking at how we enable rural and community development on a shared island basis. Importantly, the dialogues are also a starting point for broader and deeper civic conversations. For example, the National Women's Council has initiated an All-Island Women's Forum, which has already built a strong profile and will provide a report to the government and the executive later this year. The WHEEL and the Northern Ireland Council for Voluntary Action have commenced an I-Community Shared Practice Hub to bring civil society together across the island to explore common concerns, work together and showcase what works in their communities. And the Shared Island series being launched by TASC today will generate and inform public debate around diversity, equality and inclusivity as guiding principles for how we shape the future of this island. These are important, constructive interactions between civil society, government and political representatives. They help build understanding, confidence and consensus around taking forward a more ambitious shared island agenda for the years ahead that can benefit all communities. So the government will continue to support and engage with civic initiatives as an integral part of our shared island approach. I want to conclude with a few words on the significance of political leadership at this consequential moment for the peace process. Issues around Brexit have further strained politics in Northern Ireland and complicated north-south and east-west relationships in recent years. There are genuinely held concerns among some in the Unionist community about the operation of the protocol. The government has and will continue to listen to and engage on these with our European Union partners and with the United Kingdom government to find agreed resolutions. We are in the midst of the Assembly election campaign right now, but even before that, the Executive and the North-South Ministerial Council were not fully functioning. This remains a serious concern. It is vital for the future of Northern Ireland and for relationships on these islands that the political parties take their mandates from the Assembly elections and move quickly to form a new executive. This is what the people of Northern Ireland want. As political leaders, we need to and can find resolutions that move beyond the issues around Brexit and the protocol. At the same time, we need to mend and tend relationships across borders, communities and political traditions through meaningful cooperation and interaction. The peace and progress achieved through the Good Friday Agreement since 1998 must be sustained. The way forward is for all political leaders to live up to the commitments of the Good Friday Agreement, which are overwhelmingly endorsed and supported by people across this island, to see all of the political institutions of the agreement working and delivering for people, to reaffirm partnership, equality and mutual respect as the basis of our political relationships. That will remain the guiding focus for the government as a core guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement. I believe that with the goodwill and impetus there is in communities across this island, political leaders can and will overcome the challenges we see in the peace process today and take up the opportunities of the time ahead, and works for a shared, prosperous and reconciled future for all on this island, underpinned by the Good Friday Agreement. Thank you very much.
Laura, before you, I was asked to do one thing compulsorily, just one, and I forgot to do it. I was supposed to point out the fire exits, very important, right? So the recommended, in the event that we have to evacuate the building for any reason, that's the recommended route, but there's also the route there. I'm really sorry, I always get it wrong, and the more important it is, the more likely I am to do that. So, Laura, I'm very sorry.
No, that's great. Safety first. Thanks very much, Mike. So thanks very much, An Taoiseach, and for TASC for the invitation to this event today and to have the chair's privilege to launch with a few questions. I'll launch into those, and then there will be opportunity, we hope, at the end for kind of short, timely, focused questions about the Shared Island Initiative that the opening remarks may provoke for some of you. So again, thank you very much. I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit on the shared future element. So really thinking toward kind of this next generation, what is the role that you see of children and young people in contributing to the Shared Island Initiative?
Will I stand up or sit down?
Yeah, we thought we had a mic. So will you come back? Yeah, maybe. Is that what yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah.
I think as a former teacher, eye contact was always important. I feel about it. I certainly don't know what we did the same. I think we were very interested in having a youth dialogue as part of the original dialogue series that we had, because we're very conscious. I think it's 1.5 million have been born on the island since the Good Friday Agreement was signed. I think that's the figure. That's an extraordinary number of people. And I have to keep reminding myself I'm of that generation of the Good Friday Agreement and many years before that. And we've got to get into our head and mindset that younger generation with a completely different approach. And almost we have to start all over again, or perhaps not start all over again, but ask them, how do you feel about the island of Ireland? And therefore I think the challenge is that we have to create for that and opportunities for young people on the island to meet more often and to integrate more often. Some obvious opportunities arise in terms of the normal things of life, like sport and all of that. But I think we have to do it more structured. Cooperation Ireland does a fair bit of work on that, but I would like to accelerate it far more. And that would be through our educational system in terms of greater mobility across, but also schools going up and schools coming to the Republic to have common projects and common endeavour. I'd like to see work on a shared curriculum as well, particularly in history, some subjects like that, where we could take modules. And I've suggested this before, not before I came into government, because I think how we see history is key to this too. And even now when I talk to my own kids as well, that, you know, the perceptions of history is, I say that to do the old teacher bit every now and again, actually it's not quite like that, but it just reminds me of the need to do far more work on that. And I was struggling, I said this before, when I was in Lurgan, when I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, the local GA club had created a forum for young people from, shall we say, Unionist Protestant background to meet with the Catholic National background, and it was a Gaelic club that did it. But the young people that I met that day, almost stayed with me, said they had never met their neighbours for the guts of their entire schooling life. And they're just literally across the road from each other. No, we've got to change that. That's basically how I feel about it. Work for children as well, and to other. And there's great progress has been made since the Good Friday Agreement and how we do things, whether in relation to children, youth parliaments. I was at a gathering on Tuesday evening, 400 young people, second level students on the road from all around. So it's doable.
That's great. Thanks very much. Well, I also am a teacher, so I will also just project my voice. And then particularly thinking about TASC focus on inequality.
Yeah.
And what are some of the ways that you envision the Shared Island focus of cooperation and connection, kind of really tackling the root causes of inequality? on the island?
Well, look, one of my big passions or concerns really is, and I think we failed in this really on the island, I believe the school completion piece and the fact that certain communities and the patterns are there haven't changed appreciably in a number of decades. And that's problems for the future as well. But it's not allowing those individuals, children and young people to opportunities. And I think, to me, that's essential. And I would like the two governments working with the executive say, okay, let's attack this in a systematic way. Let's create programs that can create pathways for professional education, and except it will be long term. Because we've had our DESH programs there, we've had school completion programs there, and they've worked, but we still work on them, because one of the worst things you can do is fund something for 5 years and then put it away as if you're going to achieve a miracle. You are not. This is a very long haul stuff, and I think it should have happened at the time of the agreement, in my own view. Particularly in a lot of loyalist communities do need, I think, assistance in that, as do quite a number in my term national communities. So that's one, I think, that's key for equality of opportunity and equality more generally, and to create new scenarios for young people in the North. I think we have to look at integrated education more in the North as well. It's been very slow, and we could look at the models we've developed here with a plurality of choice. But I think we need to prod the system in the North a bit more to encourage greater integrated education. And I think there are opportunities in the future as well in that respect. Economically, we're picking up good signals at the moment, actually, in terms of protocol. Take the politics out of the protocol, actually, the patterns are improving in terms of what's happening in inward investment into the North. Indigenous companies doing well also from an enterprise perspective. We're now looking at joint enterprise development in the Northwest, so that we, through the Shared Island, would fund an enterprise park in Donegal. City Deals and Catalyst would fund its sister, if you like, on the northern side. And greater collaboration on that front, we think, could do a lot to increase economic activity in the North. And so that's important. Also, the research we've funded, the 62 projects have been funded now entirely by the Shared Island, out of this 40 million we allocated recently. Some of that is looking at social issues as well as economic issues. It's not all life sciences, and that's good. And it's looking at it in a regional context also. Some of the transport issues in terms of equality, the Northwest is probably least developed in some respects. So we've now commissioned an all-island railway strategy, for example. The A5 is bound on in planning and all the rest of it. So we believe on some aspects of that we could do better.
Thanks very much. Thinking a little bit about shifting toward the demographics and kind of changing, increasing diversity here. You mentioned briefly the ESRI report, and obviously your office has thought a lot about this. What are some of the examples where all communities and all traditions have been engaged through this initiative?
In terms of the Shared Island? Well, first of all, we've got very good civic engagement from all traditions. And to be fair, whilst some, and it has to be fair to political unions, might have reservations and so on, they haven't got any barriers or roadblocks, and they've given it a fair win from that perspective, and that has to be acknowledged. And I think that is important. And for example, it was at the Northwest Partnership Development Group, which is the Strabane and Donegal County Councils. They leave politics outside the door. Like, they have a very coherent social economic strategy for the Northwest. And so our meeting really was focusing on what we could do to help the economic development of the region. So focusing on, for example, the Magee campus, is there more we can do between Magee and Letterkenny, a joint project. We've done the projects on the Ulster Canal and the Narrow Bridge. The research projects have been, I think, are very exciting and very interesting, because they're drawing scientists and researchers from the colleges on the island together. we're beginning to do work now on apprenticeships across the border, that we could fund joint training projects that would meet the needs of the region. Because there is a regional context to this as well that we have to respond to, skills, talent, all of that, infrastructure. So that's particularly important. I think the climate has great potential. The fact that an all-island network has been established clearly is something that affects us all irrespective of our politics. The younger generation are really enthused, obviously, it's their future. And so we will fund cross-border climate projects. In particular, I'd love to see more coming on the biodiversity front, and we're encouraging people to come back to us and say, look, we have a lovely biodiversity project here, will you fund it? And the answer would be yes. And I mean that sincerely, because I just think I'm a bit impatient, but I want things to happen on that front. And I think there's considerable potential there for us to do more on. So it's moving well, and it's developing critical mass. We gave 5 million, or allocated 5 million into a fund to enable local authorities to work up proposals, because to be fair to local authorities, if you don't have the resources to work on a concept, it's very hard to get it to the stage where you may apply for more substantial funding. And we want to encourage local authorities to work seamlessly for the benefit of the people that they serve and that they represent. Nothing more than that. And I think there's great prospects there. And I think now that 5 million will create a pipeline of projects.
And then you touched on it briefly actually in your remarks, and thinking about how the Shared Island Unit and the initiative can interact directly with Peace Plus. And how has that been going, and what are some of the ideas for how that partnership can continue?
Well, it's early days yet. I think there has to be complementarity, because we estimate now the total funding over the next 10 years between Peace Plus, Department of Foreign Affairs funding and other funding, plus the Shared Island, will be about $3.5 billion. So that's a substantial pot and fund. If we can strategically deploy it, it could be very beneficial in terms of getting good results for people socially and economically. I believe on the Peace Plus, we want a strong emphasis on reconciliation, and stronger intercommunity relations, and helping that and accelerating that as best we can. But we will be working to make sure we don't duplicate any of that. I'm also anxious to, we've been in discussions with the British government to say, look, this is East-West as well. That there has to be an East. We would welcome an East-West to this. We've made some allocation to the research side now. In fairness, the United Kingdom have allocated significant money to the Peace Plus. They allocate the lion's share of that. But again, on the Shared Island issue, we would, because I think that would give unionism greater comfort as well. This is involving the 3 sets of relationships that underpin the Good Friday Agreement. So we're anxious to do that. What we detect in Northern Ireland as well is a strong, growing middle ground. Our own kind of research indicates that too. That there's a lot of people in Northern Ireland want to get on with life, make it better for their kids. They want to be endlessly involved in political debates. And I think I said in the speech last month, politicians sometimes do catch up with where the people are. Sometimes I think people get tied back into the trenches in terms of the bases and all of that, but we detect that a lot of people want to move on and get on with their lives. And the Shared Island Dialogue series is, Patrick Keefel's address and others like that, is beginning to articulate that. And that the identity issue isn't as we describe it, maybe as different identities emerging.
Well, we have a few minutes, and the Taoiseach had said he would be willing to take a few questions about the Shared Island Initiative. Anyone want to ask any questions for these few minutes we have remaining?
Pete, yeah, Pete.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Can I just make one comment? I understand all of these structural problems that we have on the island, okay? But the point you just made about the research. In 1972, 20,000 kilograms were seized by the police and the army in Northern Ireland. Last year was half a kilogram. Sectarian crime in Northern Ireland has declined by 65% in the last 15 years. Belfast is 7th in the UK for gross value added. If you take out the London areas, it's the most highest performing region within the UK. When in the Shared Island Initiative are we going to actually talk about the positives that have been achieved? Because I think the concentration constantly on the negative, which are issues that need resolved, underestimates the point you just made, because we need political leadership that tells us the Good Friday Agreement was a success. And I think we could do that, and we combine it to the work that you're doing, then that mood that is there will have some political shape, which may change things for better outcomes for everybody.
I don't disagree. I think Shared Island is future oriented, very much so, to move it up a gear basically, you know, because as I said, what I picked up in my last number of visits to the north is a renewed confidence on the business side and on the economic side. That's very clear, and long may that continue. I think we have a piece of work to do then in the Republic to make sure we don't get in the way of that, and that we actually help that along, to be honest with you. And that's what the Shared Island is very much about. Because there's a regional issue that applies as much to Donegal as it does to Derry in terms of access, in terms of getting the big players in there too, you know, in terms of inward investment. But I was in London recently during the Patrick's weekend, and at the financial services with the Lord Mayor of the City of London, first Irish citizen is Lord Mayor. And what was interesting at the dinner that night, people there were people who were in the financial services, but they were all looking at the north. Yeah. And they said this to me, and volunteered at it, which is good. You know? So we do need to move beyond the current stuff, easier said than done, and concentrate on positives. And there's no doubt, like I said, as I said in my earlier remarks, since the peace agreement, what has been achieved couldn't have been achieved without it. And it's been enduring, and we need to maintain that and protect it. But I think there's an awful lot more we can do. And particularly on that education piece, I think we can do an awful lot more. And we should keep setting the bar high.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much, Keith, for coming and making this presentation today. The issue, you touched on it, the reservations on the political unionist side, if you like, about the Shared Island project. It's my view that that we need to overcome in some way those reservations, and I wonder if you find that those reservations are becoming less of an issue now, or are they still there, and have you considered how they might be overcome? My own view is that we need some kind of a good neighbour pact that, you know, between north and south. That good Shared Island unit, or the Shared Island approach, is not about cajoling or Trojan horses for United Ireland and so on. That will or will not happen in the goodness of time. But that how do we actually create a good society for everybody on this island by cooperating and putting aside the issue of conflict over the constitutional identities and so on.
Yeah, I think maybe reservations is, I want to kind of make sure that I put it could be too strong a word in one respect. Maybe overtly political unionism engaging the Shared Island might be a more accurate description of it. There'll be no barriers put in the way of it. There'll be no sort of over rejection of it. I think trust is the key issue in the end. So I think it's a watching. I think you're watching what's happening, observing it, so it's that idea of is it a Trojan horse or not will always linger there. But when I have conversations with unionist leaders, there is no negative pushback at all. But I have to respect their constituencies too, and what's possible and what's not possible in their situations. And in many ways, it's been a powerful antidote to that whole idea that's kind of gone down a bit and waned a bit now of this border post and all of that. You know, this concentration on the practical, everyday realities of life for people, economic, social, education, is gaining ground. And I've noticed the rhetoric has changed on that other agenda as well, which I thought coming after Brexit made no sense to me. I think Brexit was a big enough issue we had to deal with in terms of its implications. So that's my sense that Shared Island is having a constructive impact on the debate overall. But But I think when opportunities, and we are concerned obviously in the post-election scenario as to what will happen. But I think my sense of people in Northern Ireland, like anywhere, they want their public representatives to take their seats and work for them. You know? And that's the immediate priority after the elections.
All right, thanks. We have time for one last question to really focus on the shared leadership. Sorry, she beat you to it. Here we go.
Kelly Birmingham's my name. I work with St Patrick's Cathedral as community officer, and I just reflecting on your comments and on your observations of the launch. I'm thinking about young people in particular and the future, and you've mentioned identity, and we're on a shared island, but we're a shared island in a globalised context, and we have increasing diversity in all of our communities. A mere 5 years ago, we had 40 young people from north, south, east and west took part in a charity equally event, which was a 4-day exploration of the city, their lives, culture, identity and expression of all of that. And none of it matches with anything that we perceive, and I find it really interesting that you've observed that even in your own comment, that we have to go back and review and revise where young people are at in today. How do you foresee that we can engage the youth of today, maybe outside of the educational system and outside of secular society, outside of faith and out of all of those other elements? How can we engage young people to be politically active without any of the cumbersome history that is obviously contentious? And how can we bring it into a contemporary zone?
It's a longer question, yeah, but hang on.
It's my hope that we can.
I think you have to you're going to have to try and do it in some structured way. First of all, you're dealing with it in the context of social media platforms as well, which errs on this clear and set of simplicity. The one thing that Northern Ireland isn't, it's not simple. You know, there's complexities, nuances, traditions, all this. It doesn't make for easy handling on social media platforms, which are the key platforms for the rising generations, so to speak. So that's an issue that we need to deal with as well. And how do you create fora that young people can engage constructively on these issues? Because you're absolutely correct. This is something I think is going to sweep us. I actually think we're not.
We're not even close to it, because sorry to interrupt your answer, but I think one of the things with the DESH schools, and particularly in disadvantaged and impoverished areas, is that we're finding that we have that middle ground. We have people who are hungry for more, and yet we don't have the nourishment to give to them because they're in that middle zone, and they can be left behind because they don't have the power of advocacy or empowerment of their own voices. And particularly with young people, they can be easily left behind and forgotten when they're in those more disadvantaged areas, which can alienate them then from the solutions that they absolutely have within their grasp. And they are.
I think that's why I think we're going to have to support very generously the participation of young people in debates, political debates. And in some respects, the political parties are drawing in sort of people with kind of convinced viewpoints, which in itself is problematic. So the idea of let's go at this with an open mind is something we have to generate within our schools as well. But I think we have to fund it and resource it. But at the same time, I mean, I was at a recent event at the Royal Irish Academy, and the person who won the Gold Medal Award, right, the very highest award at the Royal Irish Academy, said that when she was in second level school, only 1% of her area would get to university. Now it's 10% or whatever. That's not enough. You know what I mean? So that's what I meant earlier. This is a long haul in terms of disadvantaged communities and so on. Get the pattern up. But we have had great success too. I mean, I think we have the highest participation rates in third level, I think, in the Republic, and I think we have very high completion rates at second level. It's up to 91%. 20 years ago, it would have been at 85%. So there's a lot of good progress that's been made, but you have to keep at it. But I'm interested in your idea of how you get people interested and what starting point are they coming from in relation to the island and so on, and the different influences, the different traditions, the ethnicities. That's why we're endeavouring to bring new ethnic communities into the debate as well, because their perspective is important. So I think I don't have all the answers to that here today, but you've set me thinking, and I had to go on that journey of discovery as well, because I was really interested. So I had to find out about unionism and find out about what the unionist politicians take on what they thought of us and so on like that. And we need to create opportunities for young people to have that engagement. And we should look at the soft opportunities that are still there across the sporting, cultural, arts, business and so on like that. And it happens quite seamlessly in those areas.
Maybe just a quick one, just to
Just an opportunity to make a point, Taoiseach, I've moved from the wheel, so just to say, you know, the Shared Honour Initiative, its timing is really good. There's an upwelling, I think, of interest in communities north and south to come together, to find a commonality, to get to know each other and to work together around shared challenges. So just to acknowledge the leadership, I think, that's coming from government on this, and also the leadership that's in civil society around this. So the initiative is taking a very, I think, sensible approach to supporting engagements and energy that's there, okay? Leaving the politics outside the room. The communities, that's not where the energy is. The energy is in working together, getting to know one another, supporting, working together around shared challenges. So I think in doing that, the people who want to come together to talk are coming together, the doors are open, and I think it's there really the moment. The moment is now, and the initiative is taking, I think, the right approach to it. So just to acknowledge that, I think it's important to just say that. There's a lot of leadership being shown everywhere, I think, on this. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate the feedback. Just to say, I was at an event in Derry recently at the Interface, where women from both sides gave us a good lesson on how to take down barriers and engaging and meeting, and it really grew stronger during COVID online. But they're best friends, and there's a big wall between them. But they made the point, until we get both communities comfortable with the idea of meeting up and so on, it's then we take down the wall. And we might initially think, oh, take down the wall and take a chance. No, they said you have to get comfort, people into a comfort zone. And they said, for us it makes far greater sense, you know, instead of walking a mile around from an evening out, to be far better for us to be able to have that wall up, but we won't do it until everybody's comfortable with it. And it was a lesson too, you know, that sometimes we can't impose solutions. We've got to work from the ground up.
Well, I think I will speak for our very active audience and myself personally. Thank you very much. It was an honor to hear you speak about the Shared Ireland Initiative. And you say the final words? Yes, and we'll pass it over to Mike personally.
Me again. Well, firstly, I want to thank you, Laura, for moderating the discussion so well. I don't know how we got so much business into a brief meeting, but we got a lot of business out, so well done to you. I want to thank all of you who've come along. I thought the atmosphere, the attentiveness and interest and genuine kind of, so far as you can feel sympathy for an idea from a body of the room, there was that sense of shared thing. But primarily, obviously, I want to thank you, Taoiseach, for coming along. It was a real, I've said already, you've done us a real honour by your presence, and I can assure you, you know the topics that TASC has chosen for our shared island conversations, and conversation is what we do so well, and I think it's the hallmark of the whole shared island thing. It's a conversation, it's about bringing people in, it's about expanding by contact, by persuasion, rather than any sort of didacticism. So it's such a common bond between what we aspire to do and what we can bring to the party as an organisation, with the 21 years experience we have and all the research we've done. And if I may blow our own trumpet, with the respect that we've carved out for ourselves in these areas in a very non-political or non-party political way, it's a very ideological thing and it's a very political space, equality and inequality, but it's not a party political space, and I think we can do with it. So we really appreciate, and by the way, we're picking up from other organisations that they appreciate as well, that your unit, the SIU, the Shared Island Unit, is reaching out to other organisations and inviting a contribution to make. So you've invited TASC to make a contribution. I can assure you that contribution will be well worthwhile in your life. And can I just say finally, you've referenced a couple of times to the fact that you're a moonshore, and next moonshore, and education and so on, and that when you discussed whether you should sit down or stand up, I have to say that standing up as you were, it wasn't a moonshore pupil relationship. I felt we had a real conversation. And I think that was really wonderful. And I pay tribute to you for doing that, and I pay tribute to Laura for the way she moderated. but it was a very, very good conversation. I'm going to invite everybody here to stay for a cup of tea. I know you don't have time for a cup of tea, but you're always welcome, you know. But if I may, just wanted to, on behalf of
Various tea, is it?
Yeah.
If you're not careful now, we'll be talking about Party Queen, so go easy.
Cork tribalism.
I know. Actually, I just drove back from West Cork this morning to be here especially, so
Sorry about that.
there's not much you can say about Cork in a positive way that I wouldn't be prepared to endorse, as long as I can talk about Galway for a few minutes first. But anyway, we just wanted to give you a very, very small token, just a very, very small gift, just to mark the fact that how much we appreciate you coming. We know that, you know, you're interested in education and in books and reading results, so we thought this would be appropriate. It's a signed copy of Eunice's A Reader's Odyssey by Dan Mulhall, and it's signed by the author, and it's also signed by some gobdog called Mike Jennings as well. But we'd like you to have that as a memento, and thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you all for the invitation. Eunice says is in the bucket list, and so this will help. Thanks, Laura.
Okay, do you want to say